Oh, great. Another day at the Galactic Federation Academy. Just what every self-respecting alien needs, a chance to feel utterly inadequate next to the walking disaster that is humanity. The thought flitted through Zix'arah's mind as he slouched into the lecture hall, his tentacles dragging listlessly across the polished floor. The Quarnan students' large, multifaceted eyes scanned the room, taking in the usual assortment of species from across the known universe. There were the towering Caldarians with their crystalline exoskeletons, the gelatinous Blobians who seemed to ooze rather than walk, and even a few gaseous nebulons floating about in their containment suits. And then there was him, seated in the front row, looking for all the world like he'd just rolled out of bed, which, knowing humans he probably had, was Jake Harrison, the only human student at the academy, and the bane of Zix'arah's existence. As Zix'arah slithered into a seat as far away from the human as possible, he couldn't help but overhear the excited chittering of a group of insectoid students nearby. "Did you hear? Today's the day of the combat drill assessment." "Oh, Hive Mother preserve us. I heard last year's class had a 70% failure rate." "Well, at least we have our exoskeletons. I pity any soft-bodied species in this class." Zix'arah's tentacles curled in on themselves involuntarily. Combat drill assessment. How had he forgotten about that? He'd been so busy cramming for the xenobiology exam that he'd completely overlooked this particular form of torture. As if on cue, the doors at the front of the lecture hall hissed open, revealing the imposing figure of Commander Vex'lor. A draconian instructor's scales glinted menacingly under the harsh lighting as he stomped to the center of the room, his tail lashing behind him. "Attention, cadets." Vex'lor's voice boomed, causing several of the more sensitive-eared species to wince. "As you're all undoubtedly aware, today marks the annual combat drill assessment. This is not just a test of your physical capabilities, but of your mental fortitude, strategic thinking, and ability to adapt under pressure." A collective groan rippled through the room. Vex'lor's reptilian eyes narrowed. "I hope I don't need to remind you that failure to pass this assessment will result in immediate expulsion from the Academy. The Galactic Federation has no use for officers who can't handle themselves in a crisis." Zix'arah felt his heart sink. He glanced around the room, noting the varying degrees of panic on his classmates' faces. Even the usually stoic Caldarians looked uneasy, their crystalline bodies vibrating with nervous energy. And then there was Jake. The human was grinning, of all things. He even had the audacity to raise his hand. Vex'lor's gaze landed on Jake, and for a moment, Zix'arah could have sworn he saw a flicker of, was that fear in the commander's eyes. "Yes, Cadet Harrison." Vex'lor's voice held a note of resignation, as if he already regretted calling on the human. Jake's grin widened. "Just wondering, sir, will we be allowed to use our personal armor for this assessment?" The commander's tail twitched. As stated in the regulations, cadets are permitted to use any standard-issue protective gear provided by the Academy. "Awesome," Jake replied, leaning back in his seat with a look of satisfaction that made Zix'arah want to scream. As the class filed out of the lecture hall and towards the combat simulation chambers, Zix'arah found himself inadvertently slithering alongside Jake. The human noticed him and flashed that infuriating smile. "Hey there, Zix. Ready for some fun?" Zix'arah's eye stalk swiveled to fix Jake with what he hoped was a withering glare. "Only you would consider potential death or expulsion fun, Harrison." Jake laughed, a sound that never failed to send shivers down Zix'arah's spinal column. "Aw, come on. Where's your sense of adventure? This is what we signed up for." "Correction. This is what you signed up for. Some of us are here to learn diplomacy and intergalactic relations, not to get our molecules scrambled in some twisted obstacle course." They arrived at the armory, where various species were being fitted with protective gear suited to their unique physiologies. Zix'arah watched as a Blobian was poured into a reinforced containment suit, while a Nebulan had its gaseous form compressed into a denser, more manageable state. Cadet Harrison, a nervous-looking technician, approached, holding what appeared to be a scaled-down version of a Caldarian's crystalline armor. "We've prepared this for you. It's the closest approximation to human physiology we could manage on short notice." Jake eyed the armor with amusement. "Thanks, but I think I'll pass." The technician's eyes widened in alarm. "But sir, the combat simulation is extremely dangerous. You can't possibly intend to enter without protection." Jake shrugged, still grinning. "Watch me." As the human sauntered off towards the simulation chambers, Zix'arah felt a mixture of disbelief and grudging admiration. He turned to the technician, who was still staring after Jake with a look of abject horror. "Don't worry, Zix'arah said, patting the technician consolingly with a tentacle. If there's one thing I've learned about humans, it's that they have a remarkable talent for surviving things they absolutely shouldn't. The first group of cadets entered the simulation chamber, and almost immediately, the observation room screens lit up with scenes of chaos. Zix'arah watched in morbid fascination as his classmates were put through their paces. The simulation seemed to be a multi-stage gauntlet, each section designed to test different aspects of combat readiness. There was a zero-gravity zone, where cadets had to navigate through a field of rapidly shifting debris, a section that simulated extreme temperature variations, and even a part that involved negotiating with holographic hostiles while under fire. One by one, cadets either completed the course, usually by the skin of their teeth, or were unceremoniously tagged out by the simulation's safety protocols. Zix'arah winced as he saw Darian's crystalline armor shatter under a simulated plasma blast, and Oblobion's containment suit spring a leak in the vacuum section. "Cadet Harrison, you're up." Commander Vex'lor's voice cut through the nervous chatter in the observation room. All eyes turned to Jake as he strolled into the simulation chamber, still wearing nothing but his standard-issue Academy uniform. Zix'arah couldn't help but notice that even Vex'lor looked concerned. "Harrison, this is your last chance to equip proper protective gear," the commander said, his voice gruff but with an undercurrent of was that worry. Jake just flashed a thumbs up at the camera. "No worries, Commander. I've got this." As the simulation began, the observation room fell into a stunned silence. Jake moved through the zero-gravity debris field with a grace that seemed to defy physics, using the floating objects as impromptu shields and propulsion. In the extreme temperature zone, he appeared completely unfazed, even as the readouts showed temperatures swinging from near absolute zero to the surface of a star. Is he humming?" one of the insectoid cadets asked incredulously. Indeed, as Jake deftly avoided simulated weapon fire and negotiated with the holographic hostiles, a jaunty tune could be heard over the comm system. It sounded suspiciously like an ancient human ditty called Stayin' Alive. Zix'arah couldn't believe his eyes. The human wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. Jake moved through the course as if he'd been born for it, his reactions impossibly fast, his decision-making bordering on precognitive. "Impossible," Vex'lor muttered, his scaled hands clenching the edge of the control panel. "He's on track to beat the all-time record set by a fully armored Kranax warrior." As Jake entered the final stage of the simulation, a brutal close-quarters combat scenario, Zix'arah found himself pressed against the observation window, all four hearts pounding. The human faced off against a swarm of holographic enemies, armed with nothing but his bare hands and what appeared to be a manic grin. What followed was less a fight and more a dance. Jake moved with a fluid grace that seemed to bend the laws of physics. He dodged attacks that should have been impossible to avoid, used his opponent's strength against them, and even managed to reprogram one of the holographic weapons to work in his favor. And through it all, that infuriating humming continued. When the final holographic opponent flickered out of existence, Jake stood alone in the center of the simulation chamber, barely even breathing hard. He looked up at the observation window and gave a cheerful wave. The room erupted into chaos. Cadets of all species were shouting, gesticulating with various appendages, and in the case of the Nebulans, changing colors rapidly in excitement. Even Commander Vex'lor seemed at a loss for words. As Jake exited the simulation chamber, he was immediately swarmed by his classmates. Questions came at him from all directions. "How did you do that?" "No, boy. Weren't you scared? Is it true humans have an exoskeleton under their skin? Can you teach me that move you did in the anti-gravity chamber?" Jake held up his hands, laughing. "Hooah, hooah. One at a time, folks. It's really not that big a deal. Just another day for a Deathworlder, you know." Zix'arah slithered forward, his natural cynicism warring with reluctant admiration. "Harrison, I've got to hand it to you. That was impressive." Jake's face lit up. "Zix, coming from you, that's high praise indeed. How about we hit the cafeteria? I'm starving after all that." As they made their way to the food court, followed by a trail of awestruck cadets, Zix'arah couldn't help but ask seriously, though, "How did you do it?" "The temperatures alone should have." Jake shrugged, that infuriating grin still plastered on his face. "Honestly, I just pretended I was back home, trying to get to work during rush hour in the middle of summer. Trust me, after you've experienced New York City public transportations, a little simulated combat is a walk in the park." Zix'arah's stalks twisted in confusion. "I don't understand. How does public transportation compare to?" "Oh, look," Jake interrupted, his eyes lighting up. "They've got those weird purple tentacle things you like so much. Want me to grab you some while I'm up there?" As Jake bounded off towards the food dispensers, leaving a wake of bemused aliens in his path, Zix'arah found himself chuckling despite himself. Humans were, without a doubt, the most perplexing species in the galaxy. But perhaps, he mused, that wasn't entirely a bad thing. After all, life at the Galactic Federation Academy was certainly never boring with Jake Harrison around. Later that evening, as the Academy's twin moons rose over the horizon, casting an ethereal glow across the campus, Zix'arah found himself in the uncommon position of actually seeking out Jake's company. He found the human in one of the recreation domes, lounging in a simulated Earth environment complete with holographic trees and the sound of chirping birds. "Ah, there you are," Zix'arah said, trying to affect an air of nonchalance as he slithered into the dome. "I've been looking all over for you." Jake cracked open one eye, a lazy smile spreading across his face. "Zix, come to bask in the glory of your friendly neighborhood Deathworlder." Zix'arah's tentacles curled in what passed for a Quarnan eye roll. "Hardly. I simply thought, well, given your performance today, it might be beneficial to compare notes." Jake sat up, his expression a mixture of surprise and delight. Well. What is the great Zix'arah admitting he might have something to learn from a lowly human?" "Don't push it, Harrison," Zix'arah grumbled, settling himself on a nearby rock. "I'm merely acknowledging that your unorthodox methods seem to yield results." "Inexplicably." Jake laughed, the sound echoing off the dome's curved walls. "Fair enough. So what do you want to know?" "The secret to my dashing good looks, my workout routine, how I maintain this flawless complexion in the harsh vacuum of space." Zix'arah's eye stalks twitched in annoyance. "Be serious for once, will you? I want to understand how you approach the combat simulation. Your thought process, your strategy, if there even was one." Jake's expression softened, and for a moment, Zix'arah caught a glimpse of the serious student that lurked beneath the carefree exterior. All right, I'll level with you, Zix. The truth is, there's no big secret. No special human superpowers or hidden exoskeleton." "Then how?" "It's all about perspective," Jake continued, leaning forward. "You guys, and no offense here, you all approach these simulations like they're life or death situations. Yeah, I get it. In real combat they would be. But here's the thing, they're not real." Zix'arah's tentacles curled in confusion. "Of course they're not real. That's why they're called simulations." Jake shook his head, grinning. No, you're missing the point. You know they're not real, but you don't believe it. When you step into that chamber, your brain is telling you that you're in danger, that you need to be careful, that one wrong move could end it all. And that fear, it slows you down, makes you hesitate. "And you don't feel fear?" Zix'arah asked, genuinely curious. "Oh, I feel it," Jake admitted. "But here's where being a Deathworlder comes in handy. On Earth, we grow up surrounded by danger. Our cities are filled with massive metal contraptions that could crush us in an instant. Where oceans are teeming with creatures that could swallow us whole. Heck, even our air can kill us if we're not careful." Zix'arah shuddered at the thought. "That sounds horrific." Jake laughed. "See, that's exactly it. To you, it sounds like a nightmare. To us, it's just Tuesday. We've learned to live with danger, to even thrive in it. So when I step into that simulation chamber, a part of my brain is going, oh cool, it's just like home. But the physical challenges, Zix'arah pressed. The extreme temperatures, the G-forces. All stuff we deal with on Earth, believe it or not." Jake said with a shrug. "Maybe not to the same extreme, but the principles are the same. Extreme heat? Try a summer in Death Valley. Intense cold, winter in Siberia. Rapid pressure changes? Ask any deep-sea diver or mountain climber." Zix'arah's mind reeled as he tried to process this information. "So you're saying the key to your success is that you treat potentially lethal situations as normal?" Jake grinned. "Now you're getting it. It's not about being fearless. It's about being comfortable with fear, understanding it, using it. When I'm in that chamber, I'm not thinking about passing or failing. I'm thinking, how can I use this environment to my advantage? What would I do if this were real?" "But surely you must have some physical advantages," Zix'arah insisted. "Your reaction times, your endurance." "Oh sure," Jake admitted. "Humans are pretty adaptable physically speaking. We've got decent all-around stats, as the gamers would say. Trust me. There are plenty of species out there that could outclass us in specific areas. What sets us apart is our ability to think on our feet, to improvise." Zix'arah mulled this over, his tentacles writhing in thought. I suppose that makes a certain amount of sense. But it still doesn't explain how you managed to reprogram that holographic weapon mid-combat. Jake's grin turned sheepish. Well, that might have had something to do with the 3 hours I spent in the sim chamber last week, poking around in the system code while pretending to practice basic maneuvers. You what? Zix'arah's eye stalk shot up in alarm. That's cheating. Is it though? Jake countered, raising an eyebrow. In a real combat situation, wouldn't you use every advantage at your disposal, including knowledge of the enemy's weapon systems? Zix'arah opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. As much as he hated to admit it, the human had a point. I suppose, in a manner of speaking, that could be considered tactical preparation. Jake clapped his hands together, looking delighted. Exactly. Now you're thinking like a human. Always looking for the loophole, the unexpected angle. It sounds exhausting, Zix'arah grumbled. Oh, it is, Jake agreed cheerfully. But it's also exhilarating. Come on, don't tell me you didn't feel even a little rush watching me in there today. The Zix'arah was silent for a moment, remembering the mix of terror and awe he'd felt as he watched Jake navigate the simulation. Perhaps a small one, he admitted reluctantly. Jake's smile softened. You know, Zix, you've got more potential than you give yourself credit for. Your species might not be built for combat, but you've got one hell of an analytical mind. If you could just learn to relax a little, trust your instincts. Oh no, Zix'arah interrupted, backing away slightly. I know where this is going, and the answer is no. Absolutely not. I am perfectly content with my current training regimen, thank you very much. Jake's eyes sparkled with mischief. Come on, what's the worst that could happen? A little one-on-one training session with yours truly. I promise I'll go easy on you. The worst that could happen, Zix'arah retorted, is that I end up smeared across the simulation chamber while you stand there humming that infernal earth music. Jake threw his head back and laughed, the sound echoing off the dome's walls. Okay, fair point. But seriously, Zix, you've got potential. All you need is a little push out of your comfort zone. Zix'arah eyed the human warily. And I suppose you're volunteering to be that push. Well, who better? Jake spread his arms wide. Think about it. By this time next year, you could be the talk of the academy. Zix'arah, the Quarnan who out-deathworlded a human, has a nice ring to it, don't you think? Despite himself, Zix'arah felt a small tendril of curiosity unfurling in his mind. And hypothetically speaking, what would this training entail? Jake's grin widened. Oh, nothing too strenuous. Maybe a little parkour in the low-gravity chamber, some problem-solving exercises in the holodeck, perhaps a friendly sparring match or two. Sparring? Zix'arah's tentacles curled in alarm. With a human? Are you trying to get me killed? Jake held up his hands in a placating gesture. Hey, relax. I said friendly, didn't I? Besides, you might surprise yourself. Quarnans are pretty agile, and those tentacles of yours could be a real advantage in close-quarters combat. Zix'arah looked down at his appendages, seeing them in a new light. I suppose they could be, couldn't they? That's the spirit, Jake exclaimed, clapping Zix'arah on what passed for his shoulder. So what do you say? Ready to embrace your inner Deathworlder? Zix'arah hesitated for a long moment, weighing the potential benefits against the very real possibility of humiliation or worse. Finally, with a resigned sigh, he met Jake's eager gaze. I cannot believe I'm saying this, but all right, I'm in. Jake's whoop of excitement startled a flock of holographic birds from a nearby tree. Yes. Oh man, this is going to be awesome. Just you wait, Zix. By the time I'm done with you, you'll be running combat sims in your sleep. As Jake began excitedly outlining his plans for their training regimen, Zix'arah found himself wondering, not for the first time, if proximity to humans was having a detrimental effect on his sanity. And yet there was an undeniable spark of excitement kindling somewhere deep inside him. Perhaps he mused there was something to this Deathworlder mentality after all. The next few weeks at the Galactic Federation Academy were, to put it mildly, interesting. Word of Jake and Zix'arah's unlikely partnership spread quickly, and soon the odd pair became the talk of the campus. Their training sessions in the simulation chambers drew quite the crowd. Students and faculty alike would gather to watch as the lanky human put the reluctant Quarnan through his paces. The sight of Zix'arah's tentacles flailing as he attempted to navigate obstacle courses designed for bipedal species was, admittedly, rather comical at first. But as the days went by, something remarkable began to happen. Zix'arah started to improve. Slowly at first, then with increasing speed, his movements became more fluid, his problem-solving more creative. He even managed to hold his own in a sparring match against Jake for a full 30 seconds, a feat that had the observing Caldarians vibrating with excitement. I don't understand, Zix'arah panted one day, after a particularly grueling session in the anti-gravity chamber. How is it that I'm actually getting better at this? Jake, who was casually doing somersaults in midair, grinned down at his friend. It's simple, my tentacled comrade. You're starting to think like a deathworlder. Zix'arah's eye stalks swiveled in confusion. But I'm not a deathworlder. I'm a Quarnan. We evolved on a planet with gravity so low we practically float. Jake righted himself, floating over to pat Zix'arah on the head. Being a deathworlder isn't just about where you're from, Zix. It's a state of mind. It's about facing challenges head-on, adapting to your environment, and never backing down from a fight, even if that fight is with your own limitations. Zix'arah mulled this over as they exited the chamber, his tentacles curling thoughtfully. I suppose there is a certain logic to that, but I still don't see how this is going to help me in real combat situations. It's not as if I'm suddenly going to develop an exoskeleton or superhuman strength. Jake's grin turned mischievous. No, but you might develop something even better. Watch this. Before Zix'arah could react, Jake had snatched a practice weapon from a nearby rack and hurled it at his friend's head. Time seemed to slow down. Zix'arah saw the projectile coming, calculated its trajectory, and in one fluid motion, wrapped a tentacle around it, redirecting its momentum to send it flying back at Jake. The human ducked, laughing, as the weapon clattered harmlessly against the wall behind him. See, that right there, pure deathworlder instinct. Zix'arah stared at his own tentacle in disbelief. How did I do that? You stopped thinking and started reacting, Jake explained, clapping his friend on the back. That's what all this training has been about, getting you out of your head and into your body. Or bodies, I guess, in your case. As they made their way to the cafeteria, Zix'arah found himself looking at his surroundings with new eyes. The bustling corridors of the academy, once a source of constant stress and anxiety, now seemed manageable, even exciting in a way. You know, he mused, absently using a tentacle to snag a passing drone carrying refreshments. I'm beginning to understand why you humans are always so chipper. This deathworlder mentality is rather invigorating. Jake laughed, snagging the drink from the drone before Zix'arah sent it on its way. Just wait until we get you into some real action. Speaking of which, he trailed off, his eyes fixed on something over Zix'arah's shoulder. The Quarnan turned to see Commander Vex'lor approaching, his reptilian features set in their usual stern expression. Cadet Harrison, Cadet Zix'arah, the commander rumbled. A word, if you please. Jake and Zix'arah exchanged glances. Of course, Commander, Jake replied, his tone carefully neutral. What can we do for you? Vex'lor's tail twitched, a sign of agitation that Zix'arah had learned to recognize over the past few weeks. It has come to my attention that the two of you have been, shall we say, pushing the boundaries of our training protocols. Zix'arah felt his heart sink. This was it. They were going to be reprimanded, possibly even expelled, all because he'd let himself get caught up in Jake's crazy schemes. But to his surprise, the corners of Vex'lor's mouth twitched upward in what might have been a smile. I must say, I'm impressed. Your recent performance in the simulation chambers has been noteworthy. Jake's eyebrows shot up. Thank you, sir. We've been working hard. Indeed, Vex'lor nodded, which is why I've come to make you an offer. The Academy has been invited to participate in the Galactic Combat Tournament next month. Traditionally, we've declined given our, shall we say, varied student body, but this year I'm thinking we might just have a shot. Zix'arah's eye stalks quivered with excitement. Sir, are you saying? I'm saying, Vex'lor continued, his gaze sweeping between the two cadets, that I'd like you both to represent the Academy in the tournament. As a team. Jake's face split into a wide grin. Commander, it would be our honor. Zix'arah, however, felt a flutter of panic. But sir, surely there are more qualified candidates. I'm not even from a combat-oriented species. Vex'lor's reptilian eyes fixed on the Quarnan. Cadet Zix'arah, in the past month, you've shown more improvement than any student I've seen in my 30 years at this academy. You've adapted, innovated, and overcome challenges that would have seemed impossible just weeks ago. If that doesn't qualify you for this tournament, I don't know what does. As Vex'lor strode away, leaving the two friends stunned in his wake, Jake turned to Zix'arah with a gleam in his eye. Well, partner, looks like we've got our work cut out for us. Ready to show the galaxy what a human Quarnan team can do. Zix'arah looked at his tentacles, then at his human friend, and felt a surge of something he'd never experienced before. Was this what humans called excitement? Anticipation, whatever it was, he decided he liked it. You know what, Harrison? I think I am. Jake's grin widened. That's what I like to hear. Now let's hit the sim chamber. We've got a tournament to prepare for, and I've got some ideas that are going to blow your mind. How do you feel about jetpacks? As they headed off, already deep in discussion about training regimens and combat strategies, Zix'arah marveled at how much his life had changed in just a few short weeks. He'd gone from being a nervous, uncertain student to, well, he wasn't quite sure what he was becoming. But whatever it was, he had a feeling the galaxy wasn't ready for it. After all, who would expect a Quarnan to out-Deathworld a human? The Galactic Combat Tournament was about to get very, very interesting. The day of the Galactic Combat Tournament arrived with all the subtlety of a supernova. The arena, a massive structure floating in neutral space, pulsed with energy and anticipation. Representatives from every major spacefaring civilization had gathered to watch the spectacle, their excited chatter creating a cacophony that could probably be heard halfway across the galaxy. In the prep room assigned to the Galactic Federation Academy team, Jake and Zix'arah were going through their final preparations. Jake was bouncing on the balls of his feet, shadow boxing with an imaginary opponent, while Zix'arah was trying very hard not to throw up. "But I can't do this," the Quarnan moaned, his tentacles curling and uncurling in agitation. What was I thinking? I'm going to embarrass myself, the Academy, my entire species. Jake paused in his warm-up routine, giving his friend a concerned look. Hey, none of that talk. We've trained for this, remember? You're ready." Zix'arah's eye stalk swiveled to fix Jake with a baleful glare. "Easy for you to say. Well, you're a Deathworlder. This is probably just a normal Tuesday for you." Jake laughed, walking over to place a reassuring hand on what passed for Zix'arah's shoulder. "Trust me, pal, my heart's racing just as fast as yours. All four of yours probably. But that's okay. A little fear is good, keeps you sharp." "A little fear?" Zix'arah repeated incredulously. "Jake, I'm terrified. Have you seen our opponents? The Kronax team looks like they eat asteroids for breakfast." As if on cue, a deafening roar echoed through the prep room's walls. Jake winced. "Yeah, I think that's them warming up now, but hey, remember what we talked about. Size isn't everything. We've got speed, agility, and most importantly, unpredictability on our side." Zix'arah took a deep breath, forcing his tentacles to relax. "Right. Unpredictability. Like that move you taught me last week." Jake's eyes lit up. "Exactly. The old tentacle tango, as we like to call it. Speaking of which, you remembered to lubricate your suckers, right? We don't want a repeat of what happened in the semifinals." The memory of that particularly embarrassing training incident was enough to snap Zix'arah out of his panic. "Don't remind me, I still haven't been able to look Commander Vex Lore in the eye since then." The banner was interrupted by a soft chime, followed by a holographic countdown appearing in the center of the room. 5 minutes until they were due in the arena. Jake clapped his hands together, his expression turning serious. "All right, partner. This is it. Win or lose, we're going to give them the show they'll never forget. You ready to make history?" Zix'arah looked at his human friend, then down at his own body. He was wearing a modified version of the standard Academy uniform, adapted to accommodate his unique physiology. Strapped to his back was the experimental jetpack they'd been working on, a piece of equipment that had taken more than a few singed tentacles to master. But more than that, he realized he was wearing something intangible: confidence, determination, the fruits of weeks of grueling training, and yes, more than a few bruises. For the first time since this crazy adventure began, Zix'arah felt ready. "You know what, Harrison? I think I am." Jake's face split into a wide grin. "That's my boy. Now let's go show these aliens what happens when you underestimate a Deathworlder and his tentacled sidekick." As they made their way to the arena entrance, the roar of the crowd growing louder with each step, Zix'arah found himself grinning too. "Sidekick? I thought we agreed I was the brains of this operation." Jake laughed, the sound somehow cutting through the noise of the arena. Fine. The brains and the beauty, how's that?